G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Hillary Walsh from New Frontier Immigration Law, based in Phoenix, Arizona, United States. Thanks for your time today, Hillary.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. Your publicist reached out, thought you'd be a great guest for us.
Yeah, I'm excited that I'm here.
And tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So I help undocumented immigrants in the United States get their papers. And most of my clients have been victims of domestic violence or human trafficking. So they've experienced something really hard here in the US, and I make money by taking that terrible thing that's happened and making it beautiful by helping them get their papers.
No, that's great. Great on two fronts. One, you're helping people in need, in much need, but also you've niched down to something very specific, which makes your marketing much easier as well.
Absolutely.
And how did you start out?
Well, I'm a 20-year military spouse. So my husband was in the Air Force for 20 years and he actually retired yesterday. So I am now a retired military spouse, which is my new favorite title, being retired from that. But I started out in law school while we were stationed in Las Vegas, and I fell in love with my immigration law professor and kind of everything that she was doing. I started volunteering, kind of working with her, got into the clinic, and just realized that, I knew I wanted to be a human rights lawyer, but I didn't know anything about US immigration law. So that's all immigration law is in the US, is just human rights law specific to immigration in the US.
And what year did you start the business and how old were you?
I started my business in 2018, and that's 5 years ago. So I was 32, 33, 5 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
I was in my early 30s.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah, we started our first year, and I can say it in US dollars. Sorry, I don't know the equivalent, but our first year we did about $700,000 in revenue. And then this year we'll do probably just over 12 million. So
12, 1, 2.
Yes, 1, 2.
Holy shit, that is great. In 6 years since 2018, that's amazing growth.
Yeah, we'll turn 6 in January. And so it's been a lot of growth, and it's been ugly at times, but we have done it. We're still standing.
That's great. Well done. And obviously helping a lot of people at the same time.
Absolutely.
And what about number of full-time equivalent team members you started with and where you're at now?
My first employee, who's still with me, and I just absolutely love and cherish her. She started with me in April of 2019. It was my first hire. So about, several months after I started my business, finally had the money to be able to hire someone. And then now we have about 115 employees.
Are they all full-time?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And we also have contractors, and I don't include them, like people who do random one-off projects for me.
Yep.
We wouldn't be able to do all of the work that we do without them, but they're not included in that number.
Yep. That is phenomenal growth. Well done.
Thank you.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Well, I don't know if we've reached that yet. But I think that when we got to a really stable place with payroll, where I could predict our numbers and our cash flow, and it was stable enough to know that each month I wasn't going to be stressing out about payroll, or if I knew that we needed to borrow from like a line of credit in order to make payroll, we knew exactly when we were going to pay that money back. And that stability for me brought a lot of success.
And how far into the business, how many years would you say that was?
That happened this year.
Yep.
So once we hit 8 figures, once we started doing $833,333 a month in cash collected, that's when everything started to click for us. And I did a lot of coaching with one of my friends who has a business called 8-figure law firm, 8-figure firm. And his big emphasis is you need to have an 8-figure business because you need it to be at 8 figures to have that stability. I didn't really believe him for a long time because I hadn't been there yet. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I really get it. And I can see why he named his business. And that's why the emphasis for him is just get you to 8 figures, because that brought a lot of breathing room and that created a lot of balance in my life.
What does success look like to you?
Not having to push so hard to hit my revenue goals, to hit my personal goals even, and instead just kind of like taking one step at a time. And it's allowing the goals to happen and allowing us to hit our metrics rather than feeling like I have to be the one to do it and I have to force it and be exhausted and have been completely overworked in order to hit that goal. Once I really decided this year in particular, we were going to set our goals. We were not going to raise our revenue goal and our number of clients hired and those sorts of things. We weren't going to raise that every single month. Every year leading up to this, every month we had, let's add 5 more new clients this month to our already existing set of goals, so that by the end of the year, we're hiring 60 more people a month than we had when we started the year. I didn't want to do that this year. We just needed a year to stabilize and to really enjoy running a law firm and enjoy business a little bit. And that hasn't come without hardship and hard work, but that has really been a game changer. And that for me is success, is allowing instead of forcing.
Yeah, that can be important sometimes, and it can also take an owner some time to understand that it's okay to pause. You don't need to keep going for growth's sake. Sometimes the back office, the systems need to catch up. You need to invest a little bit more in that, or even just give your team a bit of a breather, and and not always have your foot on the pedal the whole time. So that's really wise.
Totally. Well, and it is, I don't want to call it an immaturity, but it definitely felt like a maturing moment for me as a business owner, where it was like, I sense that if I'm this tired, I'm just going to bring a tired energy. I don't want this year to be our year to hit 20 million. Let's just hit 12. Like we
Yep.
did just about 10 last year. Let's just do 12 this year. And then we can launch from there.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I mean, you kind of started out with this, but I think that there's that phrase, the riches are in the niches, which is so funny because then other people say niche.
Yeah, we
So
do down here.
niches.
Yeah, niche doesn't really work in Australia.
Riches, the rhyme doesn't work.
No.
But I think that talking to one person and being really clear on who your one person is. So you need to pick, depending on kind of who you serve, one male client, one female client. And then if you serve people who are somewhere in between that spectrum, you're going to pick a non-binary client and talk to them. But for me, most of my clients are male or female, undocumented Mexican, 45 to 55 years old. And I just talk to them all day, every day. And this year we've expanded our market to include English speakers who are younger. So I want to talk to people who are 30s or late 20s, because I think that we have a lot of options that can help them as well. And so now that we're a few years old, we can talk to a second group of people. But even then, like I still am very, very clear when I do any marketing or any Facebook Live or whatever it is, I have one person in my mind who I'm talking to, because then I can really relate with where they're at and how I can solve their problem.
That's really smart. How did you fund your business?
Well, one client at a time, like one hire at a time. We didn't use any other money. We use credit card, I guess. We use credit card money sometimes. When I initially started my business, I put a lot of the coaching that I paid for, I put that on credit card. But I'm so fortunate in my practice and in my space is lawyers don't have a lot of overhead. If I were a dentist and I had to get the x-ray machines and all these other things that are necessary in order to be a dentist, it would be a lot harder to start a practice. But as a lawyer, you really just need a computer and the internet, and you can run a law firm. It gets more complicated the bigger it grows, but I didn't have any money to spend.
Mhm.
I didn't have any connections to use debt. And honestly, I still had a very adverse relationship with debt when I was starting my business. And so it's all been really self-funded.
And you haven't had to take investors on, it's just yourself?
Just myself. My husband is the silent co-owner. He's not actually a co-owner, but we're in this together.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's more opportunity here than in any other space, and it's the most rewarding work, very specific to my desires and the legacy that I want to leave. There could be no better area of law for me. Everything else is a little bit, for me, a little bit boring and not nearly tied to the human aspect. I love how immigration is all about keeping families together. Where if I were to work, I used to be a adjunct law professor, and I taught family law. And so much of family law is about separating families and how we can do that. And that's an important thing too. Like, definitely not saying anything disparaging about family lawyers, but I love that every day I'm helping people go give hugs to family members they haven't seen in 20 years. Where if you're helping someone get a divorce, you know it's because that they never want to hug that person ever again. Possibly, right?
Yeah, that's interesting insight. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
There are many. There are many. The one that stands out the most was actually last year this time. I didn't know that I was on the horizon of 1 or possibly 2 months where we were over $100,000 in the hole. Still running the business. We were still month over month growing. But what had happened was we over leveraged. We really just overspent on payroll. I had been very frustrated with myself and honestly abused myself over the fact that I was always hiring after the need was already here. So I wasn't doing any strategic planning around when to hire. And so by the time I got to July of 2023, we were underwater. People were really grumpy because their workloads were too heavy. And I was exhausted and couldn't be in every place at once like I had previously been able to be in. So it was like, all right, this is the moment I need to hire. But I overhired and I did it all at once. And we didn't realize that until we got the books back in September, because we got to look at July's books and we're like in August, and we're like, okay, this month is rough, but we'll get out of it. Then we looked at August in September and we realized we need to make a change now because we're going to run into problems if we do this for another month. And sitting down and figuring out who on my team we needed to cut was really hard. It was really hard. And then I also brought a very stressed energy to conversations with the team about we need to bring on more clients, we need to collect more on our payment plans, et cetera, because I was coming from a very, very scary place of I need to pay my bills, you guys. And I had not really been like that since the pandemic.
Yep.
And that was hard. But we course corrected and we ended up with a really outstanding team. And everything ended up working out exactly how it was supposed to. But it was a hard lesson, a really hard lesson.
Yeah, and particularly in professional services, accounting or law or even IT, that growth seesaw, I call it. So you've got to walk to one end. One plank is marketing, go and get more sales, more work, and then you've got to run to the other end and hire. And it's even more exacerbated in professional services. So you feel you've got that balance right now, that predicting the work coming in and when to hire, when to pull the trigger on the next hire.
Yes, and having more access to cash so that if something like that happens again, right after the pandemic, I was like, I'm never going to worry that I can't make 3 months of payroll again.
Yep.
And we didn't have that nest egg set up last year. This year, as we've, transitioned and had a more profitable year, making sure that we're not doing that. So it was a hard lesson to learn, but also I just have a ton of empathy for people who are figuring it out for the first time. And that means I have to have a ton of empathy for myself as well.
Yeah. I mentioned before we hit record, we've had a couple of immigration and visa businesses on, which I'm going to send you through their episodes. But one of them is Scott and Tainer in the Gold Coast here in Australia. So I started working with them about 3 years ago, and they had two part-timers, so they were 2.5 FTE, and they grew to 14 within 2 years, doing quite well. But when we put their 10-year financial model together to show the handful of key numbers, like billability obviously is one key one there, average hourly rate, etc. But another factor that when we started diving into the numbers was the ramp up effect. So they've got, for example, a 5-month ramp up time before that new hire, it doesn't matter if it's senior or junior, is going to hit their billable target, which obviously then impacts cash flow. So that adjusted their expectations and their management, which made it much easier to grow the business.
Oh, for sure. We do flat rate in my firm. So, and I ended up putting everyone on more or less, it's not required, but pretty much all my clients are on a payment plan. And so we switched over to, we went from like a 3 or 4,000 line spreadsheet that was tracking all of our payment plans, which was craziness,
Wow.
to using a platform called Invoiced. And now we can look at the projections at Invoice to see, what is our projection for payment plan collection month by month for as far into the future as you want to go. And that also helped us really understand our numbers.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't heard of that platform.
It's cool. It's really cool.
And I assume that integrates into what accounting software do you use?
We use QuickBooks.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think it's just been personal development and leadership. So I'm a really good lawyer, and I started out as a really good lawyer. That can only get you so far when you're building a team. And if you're really wanting to scale your business or to grow it beyond where you can be the good lawyer or be the good sales team member, or whatever it may be. And so I had to develop myself so that I could collaborate better, delegate better, explain my expectations and my vision for something better, and be more patient. Really learning to meet team members where they're at, learning how to hire better starts with personal development. So I have invested a lot in just trying to be a better person.
Yep. That's a question we'll get to in a minute. But have you read Michael Gerber's The E-Myth?
Yes, he even has an E-Myth for attorneys.
Oh, does he? Right. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, he's got an E-Myth for everything. I love it.
Yeah, well, he talks about in that book, for those that haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. It's the first book I suggest people read if they're not only starting their business, but particularly they want to grow. But there's one of the key concepts he introduced in the late 80s, I think he wrote the book, early 90s, is the 3 levels, so technician, manager, and entrepreneur. And obviously you're a great technician as the lawyer, but a lot of business owners don't realize they've got to invest their professional development to become a kick-ass manager and a visionary or entrepreneur and a great leader. And that's where a lot of people kind of neglect their learning.
Yeah, you'll never be able to trust your team and hire other attorneys who are great technicians if you don't move to a different level yourself.
Yep. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
When team members don't like me.
Yep.
And that, they leave. I think that's because, and I recognize that that's me taking it personally. Like nothing I do that really upsets people is just about me. It's oftentimes got something to do with them as well. Like that's how it is with all things. I recognize that. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt my feelings when people leave and say terrible things about me. It hurts my feelings. I think that's probably the hardest part of managing fast growth, because I want to live in a space where I can develop relationships, and that even when the relationship sours or ends, we can still be decent to each other. But I can only control so much of that. If someone else is sour grapes, that hurts. I have cried many a tear over wishing that, my team liked me more. But I am more tied to my goals and really helping as many clients. We want to help 1 million people. And I hire people and I tell them that, look, we are fast growing, we're disorganized, we don't have a system for everything. You're the first to ever have this job, for example. And people often will say that they're excited, they want to come in and do that, but then don't realize what it's like to truly work in a startup. People think that startups sound sexy, but they are not sexy. They are chaos.
Yep, a lot of hard work. And with 115 team members, you're not going to get it right every time, even if you have really bolstered your recruitment procedure. Some people will still slip through. that have a bad attitude, or just some are just nasty people. I've heard of one business where they had a compulsive liar they uncovered a few months in. So it's really tough. As I like to say, people are the hardest thing in small business and its greatest asset. But
Totally. I mean, and I think the world of every person who's ever worked here, even if I think great things about them, and I want to be a champion for anybody who's ever worked here. But it does suck when they leave and they don't like you.
One of my favorite Texan sayings is, the definition of conflict is two people in the same county.
Yeah, that's true.
Another quote that one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes is, the more I get to know people, the more I like my dog.
Yes, my mom is like a textbook. My mom lives in the middle of a field in Kansas, and I think if it were up to her, she would never see, and she's a very social, loving person and is great with people, but she would really just rather sit on the porch and look out at the field and not have any humans around.
Yep. What do you love most about growing a small business?
The people. I love the people. I love the challenge. I love seeing clients come through and learning their stories. I'm a white lady in a Hispanic world because my law firm serves Hispanics. And so I have been so welcomed into this other culture that I get to learn about and kind of have a front row seat to, and observe and just really appreciate. And we all have so many things in common that for me is so rewarding. And then the people who work in my firm are primarily Hispanics as well, because all of our clients speak Spanish, and they have the same really loving, sometimes to a fault, loyal behaviors. And I just love people. So I think it's my favorite part, and it's also the most challenging part too.
Yeah. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
It started kind of at the beginning, very, very beginning, and I'm so thankful for it. But I went from viewing my clients as victims to people who were in charge of their own lives. And when you're thinking of someone who's been a human trafficking victim or a domestic violence victim, it's really hard to charge them money for your services, because someone has really harmed them on such a deep human level. And I felt really icky about that, but I knew that was the demographic I wanted to serve, and I knew I needed to make money. So making the shift from my client being a victim in my mind, because I was basically re-victimizing them by just keeping them trapped with this title. And I have my own story, and I have my own things that I have been a victim of. I thought if someone walked around and just kept characterizing me as that, like that's not for them to do. Just because they know that about me doesn't mean that that's for them to do. And I went to this is someone who is the hero of their own journey, and I'm just going to be part of that and helping them, guide them along the way. And that helped me a lot. That has helped me a lot. And I think that people who do survivor-based work like I do, once they make that shift, they are going to have a lot more peace with themselves.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
A positive attitude. So as a visionary for your business, if you have a shitty attitude, everyone is going to have a shitty attitude. But if you come in and you are solutions oriented rather than drama oriented, and I can be moody as the next person or as pissy as the next person. But if I make a decision that I'm going to be the most positive person in the room today, and I'm just going to do it, even if I don't feel like doing it, feelings come and go, I'm going to be the most positive person in the room today. It is a total game changer. And it affects instead of infects your people.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its number one growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
Now, going from 1 to 115 team members in almost 6 years, that is huge, and all the people stuff we've already talked about. But can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, so I think the loss or the challenge definitely is I've hired and onboarded over 400 people, and I have 115, 120, something like that, depending on where we're at in our hiring cycle, here still with us. So over 300 people have come through my law firm and then cycled out. And that is just learning by doing. And I don't know that there's any other way until you can hire someone who's a professional, but you are developing your culture as you go. And the things that you're hiring for today, that problem may not be there in 6 months. And so it is challenging when you're growing really fast to hire correctly. But that, oh my gosh, I wish I could have nailed that a little earlier. And I would have had many more vacations to be able to take with all the money that I spent on hiring, onboarding, and then offboarding people. And I also think that, making payroll, the big problem a lot of people have, and myself included, as I shared earlier with last July, August, September, is making payroll when you're getting, that's my biggest expense. Between 38 to 40% of our revenue is spent on people. And when you go over that and you go into the 42%, 2% of $10 million is a lot of percent to be over if you're just over by 1 month, if you're over that by 1 month. We decided to start increasing our down payments required from our clients. We do a down payment and then a monthly payment for a payment plan. If I'm going to hire someone and I know that that person is not a revenue generating position, for example, if I'm hiring a director of people, like an HR director, and that person needs a $150,000 salary, I need to figure out, what do I need to increase my down payment for now so that next month when I pay her salary, I've already got the money in the bank from down payments. And usually it's like $200 or $300 per client. Because we have about, 100 clients coming in. So you get another $3,000-$6,000 just by incrementally increasing your down payment. And that helps you manage cash flow. So that was just an idea that came to me, and it has totally worked. And it doesn't, asking for $200 more across all of your clients is not difficult to do.
Yeah, on recruitment, it's one of the big areas we see small business owners wanting to grow their business. They rush it. They don't invest enough in their own professional development to become better recruiters. And it, as you well know, it's so easy to let B players, C players, even arseholes on the bus if you haven't got a solid recruitment procedure in place. So we wrote a 2-week course for that, the Ultimate Recruitment Toolkit, to give small business owners all the resources, the best books, and all our experience, and to avoid the mistakes we've made. And we're finding that's really helped a lot of business owners.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also think that we hire some of the negative traits that we're not seeing in other people. It's because we're also not seeing them in ourselves. So if I end up hiring an asshole, it's probably because in that season, I didn't recognize my own asshole qualities because, like attracts like.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think transparency. We still are working on good communication. I think culture and communication are like BFFs, and the better you are at communicating in a way that works for your team, the better your culture will be. We're still definitely a work in progress on communicating, but whether it's to a fault or not, I am a very transparent person. I never want team members to wonder what's going on in my mind. I never want people to wonder where I'm at with them. And I think that helps give leadership a lot of direction, where if they know that they're winning and I'm telling that they're winning, I'm not just saying that to make them feel good. I really think that they're winning. And then they can take that confidence and share that with other people. Similarly, if you're not winning, I'm going to tell you that I don't think that you're winning at this right now. Like, what do we need to do? And once I started that type of authenticity, rather than sleeping on it and wondering how I should say it, or should I call a separate meeting to have this conversation with them, and really overthinking it to the point where I was like, I don't really want to have that hard conversation anymore. Once I started that transparency with leadership, the people who weren't winning started resigning. And I didn't have to fire people and create this total sever in the relationship where now they're fired and they had to leave that Friday or whatever it was. Now we have a resignation period and we can transition. And it was their choice to go because they saw that they were not going to be able to win at our organization. So I guess transparency would be my number one recommendation.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I have a weird relationship with balance, with the word balance. I don't believe in balance. It's ironic though, because my right hand, our director of operations, one of her core values is balance. And
Yep.
so we are like the yin and yang when it comes to balance. I think that everything in life is going to be out of balance. Sometimes you're going to be winning at home and you're going to be the best mom of the year and you know, you're totally plugged in. But then other times, you know, you're going to need to be that superhero at work and really give a lot of time and energy to work. And the easiest way for me is just to be where your ass is. So if you're at home, be with your kids and be with your family. And if you're at work, be where your ass is planted and just be with your people there. Be at work, you know? So that's balance for me. It's just being present.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a lot, not just the technical side.
A lot. 6 figures every year.
Yeah.
Every year, at least 6 figures since the beginning, which was really, really financially taxing. My husband and I both have spent a small fortune, but it has added zeros to our revenue every single year. And it's made our marriage better. It's made our relationships better. It's absolutely been worth it.
And you've mentioned coaches. So anything else on mentors or coaches you've had along the way?
I've had a coach this whole time. It's fun now because I get to coach other people. So I help other immigration lawyers run their law firms. And I have a whole online course now it's not going to help Aussies, but for US immigration lawyers, they can put their legal assistance and then through the course to learn how to do US immigration law. We also have a sales course. So it's been fun to take all of the stuff that we have learned and pour it into other people, which overall helps us reach our mission, which is to help 1 million people. The only way you get to 1 million is by like basically having other people go out and start helping you. And this is a really rewarding way for us to do that.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
No.
All right, Hillary, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Having faith. All of us really want to see to believe, but we really have to create it and then we'll get to see it.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
The One Thing. It's by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
Right. No, I haven't read that one.
Oh, you'll love it.
Yep.
It really helps people. I have a podcast with my husband called Let's Get Rich. And the core focus for that podcast is helping law firm owners who have either stalled out, they're a little bit stuck, or they're overwhelmed with options. And I love The One Thing because it helps distill your goals down to what do I have to do today?
Yep.
And that visual for me really helped me a lot as I grew my business.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
My favorite podcast, probably the first 3 years I was listening or growing my business, is called The Successful Mind. And it's by one of my prior coaches. His name is David Nagel, but it's called The Successful Mind. And it really just challenges a lot of the belief systems that we have. And those belief systems impact the way we run our businesses. And that helped me a lot.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think setting your core values. So if you don't know what your core values are as a person, you certainly, I actually set my core values for my business before I'd ever done a personal core values exercise. I wish that I had done them in reverse, but nevertheless, the two still coexist just fine. But when you have a conversation with team members or clients and they're acting out of alignment with your core values, it's a lot easier to use your core values as a tool of explanation rather than you're being an asshole, dude. Stop being an asshole.
Yep.
And instead you can say, you're not acting in alignment with our core value of blank. And everybody wants to be in alignment with all core values because they're kind of like a truism.
Yep.
And that helped me a lot. It helped me make hiring, firing decisions. It helped me figure out, do I give this client a refund? Like they're dissatisfied with my services. Do I give them a refund even though I did all the work? All of those things I run through a filter of my personal core values and the business's core values.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out almost 6 years ago?
Buckle up. Yeah, I say that jokingly, but when I started out, I had no idea. I had titled my law firm the Law Office of Hillary Walsh and thought that I would just basically be me, and I would write briefs for people, and I would never talk to anyone because I didn't speak Spanish, and I was going to serve the Spanish speaking community. So the only way to do that work is to do appeals and to write briefs. And I was really good at that. I had practiced a lot. So I had no idea what was in store for me. But I also never knew how much personal development a business would bring. And like just over 3 years ago, I got sober. I stopped abusing alcohol. The business brought me to my knees. Growing a business brought me to my knees, and that place where you're flat on the floor and don't know if you're going to be able to get back up. And you say, well, I'm definitely not going to get back up if I'm holding on to this wine bottle. And then saying, I make a new choice. Like all of those things, I never could have told myself on day one and believed it, because I'm a totally different person today than I was then. But man, it's been a great ride.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much, especially for your transparency and vulnerability around your journey, and phenomenal growth. Congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you.
On your own, and now 115 people and helping a shit ton of people out there that really need the services that you guys provide. So thank you and well done.
Thank you so much.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.